present. Are there other city officials with us this evening? We're so happy to have you join us today. May we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This evening we have with us members of the West Dayton Caravan of Churches, led by Father Benjamin Spear Hardy. He will come at this time to share with us information regarding a program that we are associated with.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. Dr. Young and I are here, Dr. Karen Young, who were part of the West Dayton Caravan of Churches and the Dayton Scholars Program. As he mentioned, I'm Father Benjamin Spear Hardy, the rector of St. Margaret's Episcopal Church and president of the West Dayton Caravan of Churches. It is an ecumenical group of 24 congregations here in Dayton. On November 15, 2017, the West Dayton Caravan of Churches signed an MOU with the Miami Valley Baptist Pastors Minister Association with Reverend Perry Henderson and Leaders for Equality and Action in Dayton LEAD. We signed an MOU and agreed to work together to help to close the gap in education that our young people are facing here in Dayton. It's often said the churches do not do enough, and so we decided that we needed to act and not just listen to the negative reports. And so because of that agreement, we formed what was called the Dayton Scholars, a 6-week program for grades pre-K through 3rd, to try to close the educational gap, to work with parents to uplift our young people. We know very well that education is the key to economic empowerment. And that collaboration started with 3 sites. In collaboration with Reverend Dr. Rockney Carter at Zion Baptist and Reverend Dr. Perry Henderson at Corinthian and at St. Margaret's, who were able to serve over 200 students from pre-K through 3rd. And so Dr. Young, you have copies of what took place for our 6-week program. And Dr. Young is going to walk you through the actual curriculum, the pre and post assessments as well.
Thank you.
Dr. Young.
Thank you. And I wanted to add that our primary concern is the Dayton Public Schools. We came together specifically to assist and support DPS. And so we ended up in our 6-week program offering math, literacy, and social-emotional behavior modification with to support the schools and getting the children to stay in class all day. So we held the program all day from 8 to 3, and that included breakfast and lunch. And we started out with a group of tutors, and on your very first page, you'll see this is our preschool group here. They were learning to do their math. Now, we were with the understanding that per grade level, kindergarten, preschool, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, that we discovered quickly that they were way below their grade level. And that, in fact, the 3rd graders were functioning at 1st or 1st grade or below. Little things like being able to write their names, spell, recognize the alphabet and numbers. So our goal then was modified that we would get them up to where they need to be. And as you look on the first page, you'll see we have the enrichment activity. This is we consider team building and dealing with winning and losing. And that's why we have activities like tug of war and then math. And then if you go over, we are looking at this summer, as I said, we had 200 kids. We also had a lot of of kids who wanted to learn and could not feel that their home environment did not match their willingness or desire to learn. So with the social and emotional piece, we looked at the Don't Pop Your Cork series, and I put a section in there, and I'm going to do this before I come back to the other pieces. And I want you to specifically see where it says Our Books, Dayton Scholars, St. Margaret. These are the kinds of areas that we dealt with in the social emotional piece, which is the biggest piece of contributing to them being able to function in a classroom. So you'll see where it says, don't tell a whopper on Fridays, don't despair on Thursday, don't feed the monsters on Tuesday. And then I included a section in there of the positive and the negative of how that works. Now, we did pre-testing using the Dolch system, pre-assessments for math. We ended up with first, second, and third, and let me say that the third graders came in, but some of those third graders are going into fourth grade. So that's why our scales vary. And we started out at 0 to 3%. Recognizing colors, not even being able to hold a pencil, and not functioning in the pre-K area, even into the first and second grade. We went from 0 and 3% up to 85%. And if you look at our pre-assessment, it outlines each grade level. And then when you go over to our post-assessment, where pre-K is, it says 0 to 90% in our post-assessment, being able to hold a pencil, color, and draw on the lines and be on target in all grades. My initial presentation for Dayton Scholars is the percentages for the entire overall group. The next set is the individualized group. Any questions thus far? So I also included a few letters from one of our parents. As you know, we had site coordinators. We also had the library come in and assist us with some reading and activities. They met the requirements and went above for what we required of them for this session of Dayton Scholars. It is our goal we're already planning for the next year.
Reverend Young, Board Member Muhammad AlHamdulillah has a question.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for recognizing me, Mr. President. Thank you both for this great, amazing work that you're doing with our kids. What were the challenges that you faced logistically or academically?
The challenges were that most of the children were accustomed to being hit before they would respond to listening. And so we had to teach them we had to redirect a lot, we had to use timeout, and we had to do some individual one-on-one consultation, and that was a positive reaction to what we were requiring of them. That was just to listen and then not give up. We wanted to reduce the calls home to parents so that they could remain throughout the day. Parents were very supportive. And the challenges were that they were in third grade and not knowing how to recognize the alphabet, nor to be able to count to 100 or to even trace, and not knowing their own phone number and address. So there were challenges in that. They were accustomed to acting out and being sent out for the day. So we were hoping, and we believe we succeeded in teaching them to problem solve and then return back and try it again.
Board Member
I just have a follow-up.
AlHamdulillah.
Thank you.
And followed by Karen Witt-Gagne.
Were there any logistical obstacles in your way, transportation or anything like that? And this is our first year working with you. What can the district do to help support the program? Thank you, Mr. President.
Let me say there were some challenges. However, I'm actually surprised at the amount of parents that made the Dayton Scholars. We had skeptical parents, who are you? But guess what? We had about 15 parents who took 2 buses or 3 buses and walked their children from the bus stop to Dayton Scholars every single day and picked them up. And because they were so diligent, we made acceptances and stayed an extra 30 minutes for those parents who were willing to go the extra mile for their child. And there were other challenges. We were only able to do a part of the Dayton Scholars this year because we were starting late. But the other piece of that is that the parents wanted to become more involved, and they were very invested. And we learned from them that their children were learning to read. We were sending books home, and they said, well, we can't read to them because we can't read. So there's another component that will come with that in our moving forward next year.
Thank you. Thank you for this great work. I really appreciate it. One of my big passions or awareness is the social emotional learning piece, and I recognize that a lot of our children are coming to school modeling behavior that they learn, and people are modeling behavior that they were treated, that sort of thing. So I think you've answered that in previously stating how can we reach into the families a little bit deeper so that that child that is perhaps like modeling behavior of hitting and behavior patterns, how can we get to the next, we can get deeper to the family so that we can begin to impact change on a deeper level. So I think that you address that by saying the families were engaged and engaging more families. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to certainly acknowledge the work of this great caravan, which I'm a part of. And also, I want to thank Dr. Lawley, our superintendent, for supporting this effort, and let the audience know that we supplied $15,000 to the program. So thank you from
And
the
thank you
district.
very much for your support for the children. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much, members of the board and all of you who are here. And again, our goal is to make sure that we can get our kids back in Dayton Public Schools and to be academically prepared for the work ahead of them. And so our job is now to create a new school. This is a summer program to stop the summer slide and to make sure that the kids are successful. So thank you for your partnership. And Dr. Lawley, you were very excellent in our meeting. And thanks to all of you who are the board members who are here, Dr. Walker, for making this possible. We look forward to a long working relationship with you to make sure that our kids get the best education they can. Thank you.
Very much. Thank you so much. This time we will have special recognition. Bruce Barcelo, Fuel Up to Place 60 will come at this time. All right. They're not present at this time. We will have the hearing of the public. I'd like to read just our standard. At this time, the public is invited to attend board meetings, and individuals are given a designated time to express viewpoints during the public hearing portion of the meeting. Anyone wishing to address the Board of Education during the hearing of the public portion of the board meeting will comply with the following rules. 1, complete a request form prior to the hearing of the public and submit it to the public information officer. 2, when called upon, identify yourself and state your reason for addressing the board. 3, address the board as a whole through the president and not board members individually. 4, if you have materials for distribution to the board, they're handed to the treasurer prior to the meeting. 5, limit your remarks to 3 minutes, please. The president has the discretion to extend the time. When your time is up, you're to stop speaking, and we do have a timer. 6, it is inappropriate to address any matter involving pending disputes, grievances under a labor agreement, disciplinary action involving any employee or student, ongoing labor negotiations, concerns, or matters that have already been settled, and/or any matter which, because of its nature, is deemed appropriate to be discussed in executive session. The purpose of the public hearing portion of the meeting is for members of the public to express viewpoints and public concerns. A copy of these procedures are made available at each board meeting. Finally, the board, at its discretion, strives to respond in a timely manner to viewpoints presented during the hearing of the public. Do we have anyone this evening that would like to share
Yes.
with this board?
Yes. Mr. Hugh?
Good evening. The last time I was here, I talked about drastic times call for drastic actions. And I talked about that every day in a classroom, there should be 4 hours of reading and 1 hour of math, and then every day there is an hour of homework and that's every single day. Dayton schools have some excellent schools. I have been in them. I've seen them. The teachers are outstanding. The students are wonderful. And we've got a lot of positives. And I would think that if someone asked a school board member where Stivers is, or where Horseman or Eastmont is, they would say, I've never heard of them. But the schools we need to work on are the schools that have those lower scores, and we need to be in those buildings and take a look at what's happening and try to give support so that those schools can improve their scores. I'm hoping to hear tonight about those scores because I don't understand them. But I want to see what we can do to get out of the Fs and move them up so we can have an acceptable school district. I'm going to talk about retention because I think it is important. And I heard tonight about that wonderful group that's working with children and what they're having trouble with the first graders. And I believe that retention is important in first grade. And if that child cannot read and has difficulty, then give them a second year where they can improve their reading scores and have some success. I know if you can't read in first grade, they'll catch you probably in third grade. But I think it's better to retain in first grade. Then they come back and they'll be successful. My belief is that if you can read in first grade, you will never have a problem in school. You will continue reading. In fact, I like to give them an 8th grade book and see what they can do. So positive, good reading starts in first grade, and we need to do a lot of that to get our students up to par. I also believe in retention after third grade. That's 4 through 6. Again, if those students are experiencing difficulty and we don't want to move them on and have failure. There's a saying that says, it is better for a parent to cry when their child is in first grade than to cry when their child is in 8th grade. And in 8th grade, it's a little too late to fix things. I know that Dayton teachers are working very hard. I have seen it by my own eyes by being at a lot of different Dayton buildings. They work hard every day. One thing they do need some support sometimes is discipline, because if you have a classroom with 3 or 4 students misbehaving all the time, you spend your time with them and the children are trying to learn. So we need to focus on good, positive discipline. I have some ideas on no retentions. I think that's the wrong thing to do, but I think you take a lot of steps before you reach that point. Because when a child is not in school, they cannot learn at all. I have a belief in the Dayton Public Schools.
Mr. Hugh,
Oh,
thank you, sir.
okay. Thank you, and God bless you.
Mary McKnight, followed by Kathleen Murphy Morales.
Hello. President Harris, Dr. Lawley, school board members. My name is Mary McKnight. I am a intervention specialist at Thurgood Marshall High School. I've been up here before. I teach language arts, and I also this year am teaching government, and it's an exciting time to be teaching government. What I'm up here to speak to you all about today are some concerns that are very near and dear to my heart and to the hearts of many people in the district, and are concerning the situation with a lack of a program for writing our IEPs, our individual education plans, for our students. It makes it really difficult for us to do our job that we are required by federal law to do. And right now, it's also making it difficult for central office to let us know when we have students, new students who have IEPs. 2 weeks ago on a Friday, September 7th, we received 200 records for students with IEPs dispersed throughout the buildings that we had not seen, even though they had been in the district since his children registered for the schools. The parents brought the records in. They expected the records would be given to the appropriate school, and they were not. In our building, that affected almost 30 students. and it's still counting. Every day we find another kid that we didn't realize had an IEP and was not receiving their services. This is, we're out of compliance, we're not giving our students the services they need, and we have angry and upset parents, not to mention the students don't know what's going on, and their schedules have been changed 2, 3, 4, 5 times, so that we can get them in the right classes. We're also having difficulty writing our IEPs, because even though there are forms on the state website that we can use, we're not able to download them. So we're not able to write the federally mandated plans for each of our students in a timely fashion. We have access to old IEPs, but they are not interfacing with TAC, so we can't find students to check on their progress. I have a list of 24 students that I'm responsible for monitoring their progress throughout the school year. And I don't know where half of them are. I'm going to have to go down to the secretary, ask her to print up 20, I think it's 12 that I have to locate because I don't have them in class. That's the case for every student, every teacher in our building who has to write IEPs. We have over 140 students in our building who have IEPs. There are only 5 of us to write those, okay? The other big thing I want to mention is that we have 2 multiple disability units in our building. We still do not have the necessary number of paraprofessionals to deal with these students who have severe needs. Seizure disorders, 4 children in high chairs. They need diaper changes, they need feeding, and we only have 3 extra pairs of hands to assist those children. This is the 6th week of school. Thank
Ms.
you.
McKnight, thank you so much. And before you go,
Yes.
I'm going to ask Dr. Lawley to address those
Okay.
issues at this time. Dr. Lawley?
Thank you. Just to let you know the Power School issue. The software was updated with Dr. Roberson when he was here, and they have found numerous glitches in that. So we also have testing glitches in that. But what you'll see on the board agenda today is a switch over for the
Okay.
IEP to Progress Book. And it's
Okay,
taken us
great.
about 4 weeks to even have Power School release our
All our
records
data, okay.
so that they could go into Progress Book. So we're hopeful that it will be within a week and a half or so. 2 weeks is what they told us whenever we finally got Power School to
Okay.
release it. We're also, just for your information and hopefully some peace of mind, is we're taking legal action, and we are not paying the invoice for that lack of issue. We've worked very closely with DEA on the fact that we know that you have not been able to do what you needed to do this year based upon the software glitches and software issues. There are only 3 schools in the state of Ohio using Power School for IEP, and all 3 of us are having difficulties.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
it doesn't help you with the frustrations that you're all feeling, but
yeah.
hopefully help is on the way.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Board Member Taylor?
What kind of supports are being provided? Are they given extra time to work on the IEPs and this work that is just, it's most difficult to do the job to start with when everything's working right? So what extra supports are we giving them so that they can have more time to work on their IEPs, since it takes longer to write them, so that we're figuring out what's happening with the paras that are needed? I just can't imagine. And it seemed to me there were 3. There were the IEPs and there were the paras. But anyways, if you could please explain to me what supports they have been offered within their department, so that it supports them and helps them to make sure that we get caught up when this is over, when we do have the new computer system running. Because I would imagine that they need a IEP writer ferry to come in and help. And so we need to provide that for you. Thank you.
I'm going to ask that Dr. Nichols come to the podium and address what supports have been put into place with the issues that we've addressed already. But then also, I'm certain that, Ms. Taylor, that some of your questions about what will happen when the software is up,
That's yet to be determined, what supports to help them, because we don't have the software yet for them to use.
Correct. Once we get the software up and going, we will we will roll out some plans to see how backlogged we are with those IEPs and come up with a plan moving forward. Currently, we are using the state forms. We do have monthly meetings with our OEC coordinators. We have OEC coordinators in every building. During that meeting, the last meeting, we put together an entire Google file with all of the forms, directions on how to download those forms, what they're supposed to be doing in a step-by-step process. We do recognize, I believe there are OEC coordinators in some buildings who have not gone back to those buildings and shared that information. So that is an issue that I am addressing currently. We have an OEC coordinator meeting tomorrow evening from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock, and we are going to review all of those procedures, as well as give them hard copies of all of the forms and all of the directions for completing their IEPs at this time. We recognize the frustration. We're frustrated ourselves in our department. We spent hours upon hours in meetings about this software issue.
Thank you
How
very much,
about
Dr.
extra-
Nichols.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. President. How about extra time so that they can work on them until the system is ready, so that they have more time to write these, so that we get quality IEPs for our young people that, are written in.
So can you repeat your question?
I'm sorry. Can we allow them more time out of their day to write their IEPs, since they're having so many issues with this? Because it's my understanding that the forms that they're downloading are not the ones that would work within the time period that they have?
So there has to be a balance, because our students who are on IEPs, there's a mandated number of minutes that we have to service those students. That's a legal requirement that we have to provide those services. So we have to be able to do that during the school day, and our intervention specialists work on that. Currently, during their school day, they're serving their students. So that is something that we can talk about and look at in terms of, do we need to provide that once we get that software up and running? What does it look like, and do we need to provide that? We need to have some discussions about that at this point in time.
But my question is now. Now is when they're in a slow time. I understand.
And to answer that, I don't have a plan.
This job. So, and I understand that there's legal requirements. However, I think that they need extra, this is real important to these students to have the IEPs, or no one knows how to teach them. No one knows what it is that they should be working on. The parents don't even have an idea what they're supposed to be working on if they don't have their IEPs written. And if it's taking twice as long to write an IEP than what it used to, or than what it should, in the correct system and having it working properly, then I think we need to take a look at how we're going to assist them with providing them with time. Are you expecting them to work overtime?
Excuse me, Ms. Taylor, we can't assist them with the IEPs until the software's here and in place.
They have to write them now. What I'm hearing is that they are currently writing them.
They're kind of writing them and kind of not. Whenever they can, they're doing that. But actually, we're trying to have them not do duplicate work and have them put that into the new software. So the bulk of it, as Dr. Nichols stated, we're going to assess how far behind we are, and then we'll be able to work from that point forward.
Correct.
In each individual building, there are certain things that have happened. I know that in one building in particular, that I was speaking to the principal yesterday, they sent an extra associate director went into that building to help support the teachers because they were falling behind. So I think it's more individualized in the needs that are being brought to our attention. But the real bulk of the IEP work has to be whenever that progress book comes in, because they're going to have to put them all in there. So that'll really be the test of time. So.
Do we have any idea when that's going to happen?
2 weeks. They said yes.
So they'll be like, what, 6 weeks behind? I don't feel like I'm getting my question answered, and so I'll stop asking now, but I feel that that what's been presented to us is not being heard. And then that means that our teachers are not being supported. So,
And so
thank-
just so you know, your comments are noted. I just wanted to make sure you know that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nichols. Treasurer, do we have others this
Yes.
evening?
Kathleen Murphy Morales, followed by David Ezrati.
Good afternoon, Dr. Harris, Board, Dr. Lally, DPS staff, family, and community. My name is Kathleen Murphy Morales, and I am an ESL teacher at Ruskin Pre-K through 6 school, and I have been in that position since 2009-2010 academic school year. Although there has been a lot of focus on the negative since the release of the Ohio report cards for the 2017-18 school year, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak and to spotlight some of the positive things that are happening in DPS. As many already know, as an immigrant-friendly city, Dayton is home to a very diverse population. Many of the children of the newly settled families come to Dayton Public Schools for their education, and as an ESL educator, I have always taken my responsibility for the progress of the English learners very seriously. My responsibility is to provide the necessary conditions in which our English learners can thrive, and that is the root of all the decisions that I make as an educator in this district. Our unwavering support for our families brings with it the need to celebrate the victories that they have accomplished along their path to success. The current report card that has been talked about a lot in the news and many other places has mentioned we have an F, we have an F, we have an F. But I wanted to take the time to say that although the gap closing component on the district report card received an F, 3 out of the 5 schools that were rated for the ELs, for ELA target for 3rd through 6th grade, surpassed the state goal. We didn't just meet it, we surpassed it. Congratulations to Kemp, to River's Edge, and to Ruskin. One of the elementary buildings even surpassed the math target for 3rd through 6th grade English learner students. That was my school, Ruskin, pre-K through 6. 3 of the 5 elementary schools that were rated also surpassed the state goal for the English learner exit criteria on the OELPA by getting a level 3 composite score. Those 3 schools were Kaiser, River's Edge again, and Ruskin. One of the 2 high schools with measurable ELs also surpassed the state goal for the EL exit criteria. Congratulations to Ponitz. In DPS, our English learners have the highest rate of any of the subgroups that has been reported to the state, with a 94.6%. As a department, we can celebrate trend data that shows although we continue to welcome newcomers with little to no English into our schools, we also have students that are exiting with fluent proficiency in English in all 4 domains. In 2015-16, we had 65 students exit. 2016-17, we had 77 exit. This last year, with 17-18, we had 73 students exit. We are maintaining exiting students.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. I hate to cut you off with the good news. Thank you.
So Reverend Harris has figured out the clock, and so I'm going to deviate from what I had prepared. 6:08, way to go. You're great. You're phenomenal. You're at the bottom. Just remember, the guy you passed over, Dan Shore, went down to Miamisburg, took a school district that had almost as much turmoil as this one, came up with an A, one of 28 in the state, passed a levy on his first shot, unheard of down there, has changed the culture from one of hegemony to harmony. Another guy you passed over, didn't even want to interview him, took over Trotwood, and within 5 months has that district singing a different tune. I'm going to make a recommendation to all of you, since you don't have anything on schedule on Thursday nights, maybe you go over to Trotwood and start watching and observing their school board and how they do it, because it will be eye-opening to you. But last Tuesday, I didn't come to the review session because I decided I'd had enough. Had enough of watching stupid people do stupid things, like hire an agency who bid double plus what I did and still doesn't have a clue what to do with it. You know, I'm pretty sure that it's not the teachers and it's not the students that are the problem here. And if we needed to do standardized testing, what we need to do is start testing our school board members and the administrators they're hiring for their ability to read. Because I don't think whoever did the scoring on that evaluation has the capacity to read and pass the third grade reading evaluation. One of the classics was that I didn't have as nice video equipment as Ullman Group, who has none. But I got to thank you because over the last couple of years, I've had an opportunity to highlight your spectacular fails with some videos that I'm pretty proud of, like There Ain't No F in Dayton, on how to remake the district. And then there's always DPS Fails School Marketing 101, or the classic Bullies on the School Board, which pretty much ended one school board member's reelection bid. And then the absolute best was the International Man of Mystery, where the school board member / president who broke multiple laws got to continue on his way and coaxed you into buying a bunch of buses where there was a conflict of interest. You know, you did all this. Now you got to get your way out of it, and you got to pass the levy in 2 years because you're spending money like you're going out of style. But the good news is you don't have to listen to me tell you about it anymore, because I'm going to spend my time with somebody that's lost even more money than you, $100 million in 5 years, and uncover what's going on at Wright State, because it's just too pathetic to watch you flounder in the mud. Thank you.
Do we have any other persons like to address the board?
Anna Lurie, followed by Teresa Troyer.
President Harris, Dr. Lally, and members of the board and community, thank you for hearing my comments. I'm going to speak tonight in regards to English as a second language services here in DPS. My name is Anna Lurie. I am the newcomer English language learner teacher at Wright Brothers Middle School. We look forward to hearing from Chief Mack later tonight in terms of how our English learners are being served in DPS. And on behalf of the ESL teachers in the district, we can all say that we want to see our students welcomed and served in every school and by every teacher. We want our students, families, school, and district to thrive. This requires that we all have a clear understanding of the needs of our students, of best practices regarding EL teaching, and of our legal obligations toward our English learners and their families. With the goal of working together on behalf of our students, I would like to share some of this information with you tonight. In 2015, the U.S. Department of Education and the Department of Justice released guidance pertaining to the education of English learners in our schools. This is easily accessible online. This guidance is based on Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Equal Educational Opportunities Act of 1974. The guidance states that school districts must have procedures in place to accurately and timely identify potential EL students. In Ohio, the screening process and parent notification must take place within 2 weeks of enrollment during the school year. This year, we do not have a clear system yet of communication between registration and our schools. Without a clear system of communication, we are concerned that potential EL students will not be identified and will slip through the cracks, especially in schools without trained English learner teachers. The guidance also states that English learners are entitled to appropriate language assistance services, which includes highly qualified teachers, support staff, and appropriate instructional materials. We continue to hear from families and other teachers that there are English learners, including beginner-level newcomers, being placed in schools that do not have TESOL certified teachers or EL programs at this time. While we appreciate the goal of having all students served in all schools, we are not fulfilling our legal and ethical obligations to students when we place them in schools that are not prepared to teach them. We are extremely concerned about this and would like a specific update about what the district is doing to remedy this situation. We want to work together to ensure not only that our district is in compliance, but also that our English learners are being served at the highest level in Dayton. We love our students and know how much value they bring to our community. We appreciate your attention to this matter, and we look forward to more communication from the board and district leadership in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lurie.
May I begin? Okay. Good evening, Dr. Lally, Dr. Hill, Dr. Harris, sorry, the board members. Thank you very much. My name is Teresa Troyer, and I have a master's degree in composition and rhetoric and in educational leadership. I went through the Dayton Public School Leadership Institute several years ago, and I'm this close to having a principal licensure, and that's important because on July 31st, I was abruptly reassigned to teach ESL at Fairview with the reason given that an administrator was needed, a point we do not argue. I served 15 years as a coordinator under 12 different administrators, however, so I'm actually rather proud of my teacher consistency in the role as ESL coordinator. In the time that I had served and had the opportunity to serve as the ESL coordinator, we grew from 175 English learners to approximately 1,300, from 4 teachers to 17 ESL teachers currently. Due to the abruptness and timing of my reassignment, several of the issues that Ms. Lurie referred to have opened up. We are extremely concerned about the communication or lack of communication with families as to the changes in how students were placed. It was our practice previously to communicate with families and to decide together on school placement, to notify the teacher ahead of time. Personally, I notified teachers ahead of time when they were receiving potential English learners, and then we oriented the families by meeting them at the schools with an interpreter. On August 1st, when I began my reassignment, we had at least 144 potential English learners whose home language surveys I had collected. And to date, we do not know how many have been screened. We are past the 30-day notice for screening and for the parental notification attached to that. Also attached to the screening are the data updates that need to be made in eSchool first. The eSchool updates are connected to funding, to test accommodations, and critically, of course, to services for the students. As a teacher in the summers, I have been teaching abroad. And I've been taking the opportunity to both hone my skills in teaching English and to learn more about the communities from which many of our students come. The metaphor that most speaks to me right now is a picture that comes from Managua, Nicaragua, where the vice president, who is also the wife of the current president, so that tells you a little bit about Nicaraguan politics, has planted trees of life in the capital city along the main boulevards. They are colorful sculptures above ground, and many of these trees are now being gleefully knocked down as the society below crumbles. On a day when our president has announced an extremely low number of refugees to be accepted to the United States, we are also extremely worried for our families and for our students. Beyond the checklist of what I left behind on August 1st, I'm most worried about the deep roots with the families and communities that we have grown into the relationships that allow for learning. Please hear us. Please let us continue to grow the seeds that we planted with our students and our families. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Troyer.
That concludes the presentation, hearing of the public.
Thank you very much. Board and audience, I would like your consideration this evening. We're grateful to have Commissioner Jeffrey Mims and members of fraternity as well as community members that are spearheading the Males of Color program. Would you come, Commissioner Mims, and share with us briefly this evening? And Mr. Rogers, we're thankful that you're here as well as coordinator. Thank you.
First of all, thank you very much for this opportunity to be here. And just to sort of follow up before we say anything else about the issue of last week's report. And of course, as we all work together, we know that there's no surprise with regards to that. I want to say that our children are not F children, that the system has failed us, the system has failed our children. So one of the reasons why a few years ago, the mayor and city commissioners sponsored a tax increase to support preschool education, because we felt it was a part of the responsibility of the community to send children to school in a better position of readiness, if you will, before they enter into the kindergarten. And most times, individuals, even after a child is in the classroom 5 minutes, even though they come 2 and 3 years behind in their developmental skills, they're blaming the teacher and the school system for the lack of that child's success. So we understand what happens with regards to that, and so I just wanted to say that before we said anything else. Upcoming next week will be the 5th anniversary of the Men of Color Go Back to School, which is an initiative with the Men of Color Initiative, My Brother's Keepers Initiative with former President Barack Obama, and so many partners that we have in the city. It's just so gracious to be here to talk about all of them. But we also have one key component, one key group. And those of us who know that as we, as young men in college, we have different fraternities, and we all laugh and joke and tease each other about which fraternity is the best. We all have what we call a guide right segment. A primary responsibility of our fraternity is to communicate, share, and develop young men. And when you have a totally educated, graduated college group of young men, I call us still young, we are all working to make sure we create the best conditions we can for success in not only careers, military, also college. And whatever choices those children want to make, it is our job to help support you in terms of what you're doing to make those things happen. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about what it is that we're going to be doing next week and what we have done continuously, because most of our fraternities, all of them, have adopted a high school in some way, shape, or form, and we've continued to work with the staffs of those schools on a continuous basis. And as you know, we have our fingers, toes, and eyes crossed on this grant that we have jointly applied for with the school district, the city, and Learn to Earn through President Obama's foundation. Hopefully that comes through. But even if it doesn't come through, we're still committed to make sure we do several things to help support the school system. So we know you have a very strong curriculum. We're supporting that curriculum. We also understand that there's several key things that we know from research that support black male achievement. And they did not get here by accident, but there's several key things we know that's going to move them out of that position. One of those, of course, is their attendance, their behavior, their love for self, and the emphasis on doing the best they can in all that they do. And that's one of the things that we're going to try to emphasize with each one of those high school groups of young people that we're working with, to mentor them, to take them to junior high and support other programs, and to take the junior high and the high school to the elementary to work with those young people as well. But I'm going to stop right now. I do want to recognize the fact that we do have alphas as well as kappas here. I'm sure we have sigmas. And then we got then we got the Qs, and we got what we call the independents with Mama Shaka Ford. So this is just a cross-section of men that we have that are going to be working with this on a continuous basis. And I will stop and let them just sort of introduce themselves, because I'm not going to take all the spotlight. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Brother Mims. Good afternoon. I'm Brian Martin. I am the president of the Dayton Alumni Chapter of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity. In my day job that pays the bills, I'm the executive director of the Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission. So we're just up the street. If you need anything from us, please call on us. Thank you.
Freddie Fields, proud graduate of Rolfe High School back in 1970, Dayton Public Schools, former teacher, retired educator from Dayton Public Schools as well, 2006 from the Dunbar High School.
David Henderson, former graduate of Roosevelt, class of '64, high school, Dayton, and a former public school educator in Dayton for 33 years.
Good evening. My name is D'Angelo Dean. I am actually a NEO here at Kappa Alpha Psi. And my job, actually, I'm the CFO at Project Cure Incorporated.
Good afternoon. My name is Grant Jones. I'm a semi-retired banker.
Marlon Shackelford. I'm a God Fight God. That's the fraternity we all need to be in. Omega Community Development Corporation, and I'm an international rites of passage facilitator, and I feel real good. Oh, Fairview too, 81, believe that.
John Rogers, coordinator for the Office of Males of Color, and also working in collaboration with Commissioner Mims and the entire city. So they'll be working closely with the Office for Males of Color as we try to coordinate some of the mentoring and other opportunities that we're going to have with this group of men and many others for the rest of the year. Thank you.
I'm Deion Sampson. I am the site coordinator at Fairview Pre-K through 6th School, home of the Mighty Bulldogs. I am a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, but my greatest job is that I am a father of 4 children who are in Dayton Public Schools. And I am a graduate of the Paul Laurence Dunbar High School.
Here we go.
Again, just want to say thank you for your opportunity to let us work with you. And again, it's going to be a continuous love affair and relationship that we have with you on behalf of our community and behalf of our students. So again, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Mims, and thank you to each man that serves our community for your mentorship and work. Thank you very much. Do we have any of our bargaining units present that'd like to address the board at this time?
Thank you, President Harris. Good evening, DPS Board, Superintendent Lally. My name is David Romick, and I am proud to represent the Dayton Education Association. First on the agenda, and I promise this agenda was written at about 3:30 this afternoon before the previous speakers took to the podium tonight. I would like just to take a few minutes tonight to actually recognize our intervention specialists in DPS for the hard work that they've done thus far this school year. I do realize that the new IEP system is on the agenda tonight for purchase. That's been a long time coming. Having been a part of the DPS cabinet this school year and having been in those key conversations, I do realize the struggle that the district has had with Power School. That's unfortunate. It's been a mess for you as a school district, which unfortunately has created a mess for us as teachers. And I'm glad to hear that that you're going to seek remedies from that company, because that I think is necessary. But I would like to publicly recognize our intervention specialists and related service providers, because they really have done outstanding work with the system issues they were confronted with since school started. And I would just like them recognized tonight. In answer sort of to the questions that were provided, I have worked very closely with the superintendent and with the Office of Exceptional Children in terms of how to address these issues as we've gone through the school year, in terms of how to maybe compensate the intervention specialists or look at how to provide them with extra time. And I think the best answer that we can provide at this time is what's been provided. We don't know until that new system comes online whether we're backlogged, how backlogged we are, and how best to provide those intervention specialists with what they need, whether it be time, whether it be a compensation model, whether it be what, to make them whole going forward, to give them what they need going forward to either make up for or get them to a point where they're restored to what they should have been had this all not occurred. But to Board Member Taylor, I promise you that I've been step for step with the district in this since it occurred, and I will stay right there, no doubt about it. Secondly, just my normal report to the board. It's that time of year. The Ohio 8 Coalition will hold its fall quarterly meeting this Thursday and Friday in Columbus. The topic on the agenda will be best practices across the Ohio 8 Coalition in cultural competency. Thank you. Each district was asked to provide its own best practices in cultural competency, and I believe Canton City Schools will be our presenter this Thursday and Friday. I think it's important now that, and I was going to sort of deliver my own message to DPS, but without knowing it was coming, there was a message to DPS sent out in letter form this afternoon from our superintendent related to the recent release of the state report card. President Harris, I would like to publicly thank our superintendent for that letter. I read it very carefully. I read it several times, and I would like to thank our superintendent for that letter. I had a plethora of emails since the release of that report card from concerned teachers and other members whom I serve, wondering, were they being blamed? Was it their fault? And I think the letter from the superintendent made it clear that that's not so. And I want to echo that tonight and state very clearly from my position as representative for the Dayton Education Association that there is not one student in this school district, that there is not one teacher, not one educator, not one bus driver, not one person who serves students in this district who is a failure. And I don't care what the state report card says. And I will say that here. I will say that on any street corner. I will say that in any community in this state. Every day, we safely transport our students to school. Every day, we feed our students. We educate them. We nurse them. We care for them. We nurture them. We listen to them. We read to them. And at the end of every day, we safely transport them back home. And once that's done, all of us, every single one of us, spend our time preparing to do it all again the very next day. We do all of this under some of the most challenging public education conditions that exist in the state of Ohio, and amen is right. My message to you, DPS, and I mean all of you, is keep your heads up. We can do this. And you know what? We can do this ourselves. In fact, we must do this ourselves. We have the answers. We have the answers right here in this room. We have the answers right here in this school district. So do not go to your homes. Do not sit in your classrooms, do not gather in your schools, and wonder if you're failures? The answer is no. And I will say on behalf of the superintendent, because I read her letter several times, on behalf of the superintendent and myself as representative of the Dayton Education Association, no, we are not, and we're going to prove it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Romick. Are there any other bargaining units present? Hearing none, at this time, we will have a special presentation. We are grateful to have with us members of the Ohio Department of Education, and they will come at this time to share with us.
Good evening, Board President Harris, board members, Superintendent Lally, and all of you distinguished guests. I'm Dr. Clary Huff Franklin, Director of Administration in the Center for Continuous Improvement at the Ohio Department of Education. And I have to say, it was nice. It was a nice reunion. Did he leave? Is he still there? Nice reunion to see Mr. Jeffrey Mims again, who previously served as our state school board member. And it was nice to hear about the work of the men of color as well. So kudos to you. I would like to recognize the following state leaders who are in attendance. We have Senior Executive Director of our newly formed Continuous Improvement Center, Dr. Marva K. Jones. We also have Director of Report Card Project, Marianne Motley, and Ohio Aid Liaison, Tarek White, and Director of the State Support Team 10, Betsy Appolito. This evening, we would like to share with you information regarding two main areas: the district review report card, the district review report, and then the student performance data from the district report card, which is reflective of your district's most recent report card. We heard the previous gentleman say that he would like to understand the report card, so we'd like to glean a little more understanding for all. The data that's actually in the report is actually from the previous school year, so we appreciate that Ms. Motley was willing to come this evening and share information that's related to the current report card that was just released on September 13th. So I think we have some documents that are being passed out. There are a few district review full reports, but then we also have more executive summaries, about 50, which is the front part of the review. Thank you, Dr. Jones, for taking that out, passing those out. So we normally begin with the student performance data, but we recognize that there are many questions around your report card. So we'll begin with the district review report instead, and then we'll conclude with district report card question and answer afterwards, if that's all right with President. All right. So as we said, we have some documents that have been passed out, and the actual report will be posted to the Ohio Department of Education's website for all to view in the morning, tomorrow morning. The district review site visit to Dayton Public Schools was conducted from May 7th through the 11th of this year. I'd like to just share briefly the format of the report for everyone to understand how the report is designed. So this first part is the executive summary, and some of you have that part. It's in the front of the report, and it highlights most of the strengths, challenges, and recommendations, but not all of them. The full explanation of all the strengths, challenges, and recommendations are in the report. So initially, when I explain the strengths, I'll just walk through the first one so you can see how the report is formatted. As I said, the charts that are reflected are from the school year 2016-17, or yes. And Ms. Motley will share 17-18 with us. For each strength, there is an impact statement, and for each benefit, there's also, each recommendation, there's a benefit statement. So you have an impact statement for strengths and challenges, and then a benefit statement for recommendations. So you have your executive summary and the 6 areas that are listed: leadership, governance, communications, curriculum and instruction, assessment and effective use of data, human resources and professional development, student supports, and fiscal management. And for each one of those 6 content areas, you have strengths, challenges, and then recommendations for each one of those challenges. So we were here a few years ago, and we did a very thorough explanation of the district review. On our ODE website, you're able to get more explanation of details about the district review. You board members were interviewed, staff, teachers, stakeholders of the community were interviewed. So following the executive summary, we have the rest of the report broken down by the strengths, challenges, and recommendations. The section that Ms. Motley will explain more about is under the overview and the student performance, and the charts that are at the back of the report correspond and correlate with the student performance section in the beginning of the report, okay? So, as we look at strengths right now, I would say that I do agree with the gentleman who spoke earlier that there are a lot and many positives in the District of Dayton. And we also recognize, as the union president said, that the staff in Dayton do work hard. We totally recognize that. And so this is one reason we're purposeful in sharing that there are strengths in the district. There are things that are going well here that we advocate that the district continue. And so I'll start out by highlighting just a few. And looking at the first one under leadership, governance, and communication, the Board of Education and superintendent collaborate with stakeholders to support student achievement in college and career readiness. So if you look, those who have the report, if you look at page 10, you'll see more details about that particular strength. And you'll see quotes that are written in many of the areas. And when there are quotes, they're used, generally they summarize what many have said. So it's one quote, but the report itself is a collective. And we'll speak to, even when it comes to the challenges, we're not trying to pinpoint any one person. It's a collective effort that helps the district move forward. So the quotes you see are here, but they are representative of what many said. So looking under that first strength, superintendent collaborate with stakeholders, various bullets, various examples. One, the district has increased partnerships among business, community, and government entities to support students based on interviews and documents. Counselors, principals, and superintendent go on field trips to area businesses to increase opportunities for students to be career ready. And one more point out of many, the City of Dayton, Dayton Public Schools, and local labor met on April 20th of 2018 to discuss apprenticeships opportunities for students, which is very positive, showing that the leadership is not working solo in community, communicating with the community. And then you'll see an impact statement at the end of each of the strengths and the impact here. When the district collaborates and forms partnerships with businesses, the community, and government entities, it may increase college and career opportunities for students and improve student achievement. So that same strength goes in alignment actually with where you see under student supports, the first bullet. It connects with leadership, but it has an emphasis on student supports. The district developed working relationships with community, business, and higher education partners to support K-12 students and provide college and career readiness opportunities, which is further explained on page 15. We heard of some great organizations today and noted in our report, because we want to also reiterate, all information here is at the time of the review. So many things happen since then that are not reflected here. And even many things happened that may not be reflected in the report, but for whatever reason it didn't get captured in this report. It's a snapshot in time. We had contractors who are not ODE employees, contractors from third-party view, not an ODE view, who were here just for 1 week, snapshot of time. But having said that, we heard today of some organizations who are doing great things, who may have started after the review took place, but you'll see in the report, it was noted that the City of Learners sponsor many support initiatives, as well as Learn to Earn, which is focused on fostering student success at critical junctures throughout the children's journey. So that's something that's positive, and that, as the union president had noted, the district is able to hold their head up about. Another point worth noting, but there are several we did make sure to include, is under human resources and professional development. If you'll look on page 14, the district employs teacher leaders to provide building level, job-embedded professional development that is focused on teacher instructional needs. Just a couple of points. 27 teacher leaders were assigned to schools during 17-18 school year to provide direct instructional support to classroom teachers. And they work with the curriculum department and principals to provide support. And they support teachers in the use of a variety of data types to inform instructional practices. So those are a few points worth noting. As I said, we have been purposeful. The report itself is not a compliance report that you must do this or you'll lose this. It's simply designed to be proactive and preventive of further negative kind of grades of the students. So there are areas to celebrate. However, we need to look at some areas that are challenging, that need improvement. And we want to reiterate that no one is to blame for anything. As I said, it's a collective effort. It's been a collective effort to get your district to where it is today, and it's going to take a collective effort to move forward as well. Having said that, looking at under curriculum instruction, the first challenge, that first bullet, the district does not ensure the consistent delivery of evidence-based instruction to promote high achievement for all students. Now, that's further explained in 19, on page 19. In the key word here is consistency. So we're not saying that every classroom doesn't do this, but we're saying every classroom needs to do this. So there are cases that there is evidence-based practice being done. But the point here is teachers do not consistently use evidence-based strategies and resources in all classrooms. Lastly, according to teachers and administrators, the district does not consistently address students' varied learning needs due to misaligned district initiatives and the frequent change of records. Furthermore, just briefly, even at point number 3 of student supports, the district does not consistently differentiate instructional practices to address the learning needs of students. The district should be providing a continuum of supports and interventions to match student academic, social, emotional, and behavior needs. So, there were, after observation by the team, teachers from more than 100 classrooms that were reviewed, teachers' differentiation of instruction varied across individual buildings and classrooms. So one more point that we'll highlight is under assessment of ineffective use of data. The district does not use common formative assessments to determine students' learning or the students' performance data to modify instructional practices. So that's further explained on page 22. Formative assessments would be those tests that you give throughout the year versus just relying solely on the report card, which is only once a year. And according to interviews, at the time of the review, again, there was no evidence presented that indicated teacher-based teams use current formative data to make instructional decisions. Again, inconsistency. Inconsistent use of formative assessments were used in the classroom. And it's worth noting the district does have a data dashboard, which online electronic platform that houses student performance data actually exists in the district. And it houses varied assessment sources, but based on our review, it's not been easily accessible by the teachers. And based on what was conveyed to the team, only principals have access to that data dashboard. There again, things may have changed since then. For the most part, the review team saw that teacher-based teams use summative data. And as we stated, it's preferable to use formative data so you can track the success of students along the way and therefore work on interventions that would be appropriate as well. So sharing those challenges, to some degree we heard from an IEP, one of your intervention specialists speak about IEPs. Under student supports, we see further explained on page 28, the district does not have a multi-tiered system of support to address student academic and behavior needs. So these things have been recognized, and as we look at the recommendations, which are all on page 36 through 39, I can explain now how the next steps work in trying to give support to the district, rather than just pointing fingers and saying, well, you're not getting it right, how we are trying to also offer support. Well, I've already introduced our state support team leader, Ms. Appolito, who continually and every month, regularly with the team, works with the district on their improvement plan, their district improvement plan. But for each challenge, you'll see that there are recommendations which begin on page 36. We will sit down with the district district leadership team and not try to have them create a new plan, but they will revisit their current improvement plan, and we'll see how to embed these recommendations. Rather than make a new plan, it's helping them to embed the plan, the recommendations. So for the first one, when we spoke of curriculum instruction, provide professional development to teach staff on evidence-based instructional practices. So another thing we're able to do when we sit down, so it's a state support team, and in this heightened sense of urgency to help your district, we're collaborating across ODE to give supports. One of the things we're now able to share is that we have an evidence-based clearinghouse that just started last week of resources that districts are able to use. So state support team and ODE staff will be working with the Dayton staff to walk through and make sure they understand how to access and best utilize resources that now we're compiling, and we'll be encouraging this district and other districts to continue to add some of their evidence-based practices to our resources as well. So we're happy about that, to finally have that resource. But those are the kinds of things we're able to share when we sit down with the district and share some of these recommendations. Some more of the recommendations: ensure the district identifies evidence-based instructional practices and strategies that address all students' learning or behavior needs. And under assessment, it was the first one we saw as a challenge. The recommendation is to provide professional development on assessment literacy to guide the creation of grade-level formative assessments. And then there's more explanation. So as we said, we're not trying to have the district make a new plan, but we'll be expecting them to use our recommendations to inform their current plan. So having said that much, I will entertain questions on this part. I know you might be just itching to hear more about the report card, but I want to allow for you to ask any questions on the report itself, the findings, and any other thoughts or questions.
Board Member McManus.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for sharing this information. Is it too early to ask about the fiscal management portion of the report?
Sure.
Okay.
No, it's not too.
There we go. Okay. I do have a question.
Okay.
So, of course, and as you rightly note in the report, that the board is required to approve all purchases of over $5,000. And I did read this, and so there was one section that I wanted to ask for further detail. Section D on page
34?
Page 34, correct. Okay. Two quotes. After according to interviews with district administrators, principals, and district staff stated, quote, "I split my purchase orders to be under $5,000." Or, quote, "I make my orders for up to $4,999.
Yes.
Would you, or perhaps one of the other members of the staff, if that was the portion that you worked on, go into greater detail about the extent of that practice here at Dayton Public compared to other school districts, if you are knowledgeable of that comparison?
Okay, well, I'll clarify one thing. So the team that worked on the report, they were contractors who are not ODE employees. So if there are questions we're not able to answer, we'll make sure to get back to them to clarify. The second thing I'll say is, as I stated before, when it comes to any quote, it was a generalization. It was not a quote in isolation. So it was added because it was an indication of several people. So
am I right to assume that, therefore, a quote is not a quote?
It is a quote, but it was a good indication of what many said. So it's not one person in itself. Even though one person said it, but it's included because it is indicative of what many people said, if that helps. So now, to the intensity, how many have said that specifically and how many that is true for, well, this is the one reason we have the report for the district to follow up to see, is this, how widespread is this?
I'm so sorry to interrupt. That's very interesting what you said, and I'm not trying to be combative in the slightest. I'm just trying to understand this. I would assert that if a quote listed in this report is not actually a quote, it is slightly misleading to put it in quotation marks, as if it were a quote.
Yes, okay.
Perhaps a statement stating...
Let me clarify.
Well, I'm not finished.
Okay, I'm sorry.
But perhaps a statement to the effect of, many stated something to the effect of. Because a quote, this board is charged with really holding the administration to account, because I take this very seriously. This is the reason I ran for the school board in 2015, was because of y'all's last report. So I take this very seriously, and I thank you for the work that it took to garner this information. But I must state that if that is not a quote, then it should not be in quotes.
Yes, it is a quote, but I'm saying it's only included because several people were able to say the same thing. It's not an outlier. That's
Okay.
That's what I'm trying to clarify. We would not have used it if only one person made this statement, which
Sure.
one did, but many did. And if it was only one and all the others said something different, we would not have included the quote. That was my only point.
Thank you. And I just wanted to note my objection for the record. But would you go into further detail behind those statements there in terms of, in line with my previous question about, did you notice that this practice was perhaps more utilized at Dayton Public than in other districts across the state, keeping those purchase amounts below the $5,000 minimum, or the similar standard as set by the board in other districts requiring board approval for purchases?
I am not able to speak to that at this time, but we can get that information and get it back to your superintendent if we're able to ascertain comparisons to other districts.
That would be much appreciated. And thank you, ma'am. I appreciate the information. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any other board members have any questions thus far?
Okay. So if there are no more questions about the district review report, I would like to now ask Director of Report Card Project, Marian Motley, to come now and share more information about your report card. Thanks.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
My name's Marianne Motley. As Clary said, I'm Director of the Report Card Project, and I'm here tonight just to talk a little bit about your 2017-18 report card. So I'm not going to talk real in-depth because, to be honest with you, we have not really had a chance to do a lot of analysis. As you know, the report cards just came out last Thursday. And these reports that we do literally take weeks, where we delve through data, we look at trends, we look at comparisons among, in your case, the Ohio 8 districts to see where you're trending up and down or where you fall within your similar group. But I do want to have just a few pieces of data that I wanted to update. As you know, and obviously you can see your report cards, you did get a D in progress in improving at-risk K-3 readers, which we used to call our K-3 literacy measure. And then you had Fs for the other 4 components, which led to an overall letter grade of an F. A couple of things that I noticed, and again, I'm going to kind of talk way up at the 10,000-foot level here. You had one indicator met, and that was the end-of-course improvement indicator. This is a new indicator that was created because of outreach with districts all across the state. In the past, we used to include retaken tests in the end-of-course exams at the high school level with each of their respective tests. So if a student was retaking algebra, it was in the Algebra 1 indicator. If they retook biology, it was in the biology indicator, etc. And what we heard was that in order to better provide an apples-to-apples comparison among and between districts, we should only include first-year test takers. So when the student takes biology, they take the test for the first time, and only include those students in the individual subject indicators. Our State Board of Education felt pretty strongly that we should also report data to see cumulatively how do those students ultimately fare. So we created an end-of-course improvement indicator, and that was the one indicator that you met. About 29.4% of the tests that were taken by students that were being retaken moved up a level. which does say that, you are doing some remedial work with students and you are trying to get them more graduation points closer to proficiency. So that's something to take a look at, and that's a new piece of data this year in terms of being able to parse out those tests a little more easily. Another thing that I noticed is that you've got a big increase in fourth grade proficiency. A lot of times what we look at are classes of students year over year. So comparing the 2017 fourth graders to 2018's fourth graders to see if kids are improving, if teachers are changing their methodologies of teaching more to the standards, that kind of thing. And I do see some big increases in fourth grade proficiency at both the English and math subject levels. And then in 7th and 8th grade English, we're also seeing some pretty significant gains. And then, of course, the end of course exams, when you take those retaken tests out, you're going to see some pretty significant increases with the end of course exams. A lot of that is because we've taken that noise of the retaken tests out of the data, but you are seeing that, those percentages have gone up a little bit. Couple of things that we also noted, however, in third grade, both subjects between the classes of 17 and 18, the class of 18 did more poorly on both tests, English and math, at the third grade level. So that's something to take a look at for the coming year. And then the other thing that's brand new this year, we have a chronic absence indicator. We're required by federal statute in the Every Student Succeeds Act to do something where we provide some kind of a graded measure that contributes somehow to the report card that doesn't rely on test data. And a lot of the states, in fact, a majority of the states across the country are using chronic absence because we know there's such a strong correlation between strong attendance and strong test scores and, strong graduation performance and things like that. What we're seeing is that 30.7% of the students across the Dayton City School District have missed at least 10% of the school year. So we deem a student to be chronically absent when they miss at least 10% of the hours that are in a typical school year. And you've got 3 out of every 10 students meeting that target. So that's pretty high, and when we look at between 2017 and 2018, the numbers are exactly flat. In 2017, we reported those data. We didn't grade them, but they were reported, and you also had 30.7% that year. So it kind of says that's an area you may want to take a look at, and I was really pleased to hear Commissioner Mims talking about My Brother's Keeper. I know they've done quite a lot with trying to get students whatever unmet needs that they've got met so that they can come to school, whether it's transportation or, the not having clothes or being bullied, all of the things that cause students at whatever, not to come to school, trying to solve those problems. Another thing I noticed, your performance index score. This is a calculation where we rate the tests based on their performance level. So as students do better and answer more questions correctly, you earn more points. And we have different ranges of scores, limited, basic, proficient, etc. And you get points for every time a student moves up a level, you earn more points in that index. You also have students who are not tested included in that index, and for those students you earn no points. And something that I found interesting is that you had 4.6% of the total tests that should have been taken were not taken. So over 4.5%. In some cases that may be a single student not taking 2 or 3 tests. A fifth grader may not have taken their English, math, or science. In other cases, it's a single student not taking a single test. But that really hurts your performance index. You actually had a drop in your PI score. In 2017, it was 57.1 points out of a possible 120. This year it was 55.7. And when I look at that and I look at the difference in the ranges of scores of tests actually taken, I think you actually had a few more students doing a little better in terms of the range of score that they fell in. A few kids moved up from limited to basic, from basic to proficient, and so on. But what really killed that PI score was that you had 4.6% of the tests not taken. So those are kind of points left on the table. And again, I know it's difficult. Every district has some students that aren't tested. But to put it in perspective, the year before in 2017, you only had 1.2% of the tests. So you quadrupled almost the number of tests not taken from one year to the next. So I'm not sure exactly what happened in that year, but that's something to take a look at again, because there is that punishment or penalty for not having students tested. I know a little bit earlier we talked to some of the other people up here talked a little bit about gap closing, and that is where there's another new piece of the report card, because we are now including how well schools and districts are doing in teaching students English, helping them to become proficient in English. And you do fairly well compared to your peer districts in terms of the percent that are making progress. And I think you heard some specific numbers for some specific schools. District-wide, I think it was that you had 47.1% of the students either became proficient or made some progress. And the way that you get progress is students take these 4 tests. There's a reading, writing, listening, and speaking domain, where they test each of those pieces of the English language to see how proficient they are in that particular strand of the standards. And they get an individual score for that. And we total the scores. It's a score between a 1 and a 5, and that becomes their composite. The kids come back, they receive their services throughout the year, they come back the following year and take that same test in the next grade level, and we look to see if they've gained points. So if they had scored a 9 across those 4 tests, did they get to a 10 or an 11? And you get credit for those kids that are getting closer to proficiency, even though we may know that they need a little bit more time before they actually can exit EL status. And then you also get credit for students who actually become proficient and are able to exit, so that we know that English is not a barrier to learning. It doesn't obviously mean kids are successful, but at least we know language isn't the barrier. For graduation, you also had some interesting data. One of the things that we look at there is we look, because we do a 4- and 5-year graduation rate, we look across cohorts from one year to the next. So how many kids, for example, in the class of 16 made it out with a diploma by the end of their 4th year of high school? Then how well did you continue to serve those that were left behind for a 5th year to continue to try to get more students out? And a couple of things that I see is that in 2016, your class of 2016, 72.6% of the kids graduated by the end of their 4th year. Another year of school went by here in 2017, and that 4-year graduation rate, when it became the 5-year, went up to 79.4%. So we're talking almost a 7% increase in the number of graduates who made it out by the end of that 5th year, which again says to me that there's something going on at the high school level, that you're trying to get kids to persist, you're trying to get them over that last hurdle, whether it was an OGT, whether it was that last credit that they needed to earn, coming back and fulfilling that last barrier that was holding them back. So that's something to look at. On the downside, one of the things that we're seeing is when we compare one graduating class to the next, you actually had fewer graduates in the 4-year rate for the class of 17. So as I said, that class of 16 had 72.6% getting out on time. When I look at those same kids for the class of 17 who got out in the 4th year, only 69.5% graduated. So that's a little bit of a challenge there, and something that you'd want to take a look at. A couple more pieces of the report card, and then I'll stop and take questions. Improving at-risk K-3 readers. That used to be called our K-3 literacy measure. And what we're looking at there are kids who come to school, and I think we heard from one of the people earlier, how kids can't read, they don't know their letters, their numbers, they can't count to 100, things like that. We know a lot of kids come to kindergarten not ready to learn to read, but what we're measuring there is how many of those kids ultimately are gaining proficiency and getting up to grade level. So that improving at-risk K-3 readers measure takes into account the kids you're moving from being not on track in a particular grade to being on track with their reading skills at a future grade level. So when we look at that, only 14.9% of the kids are moving to on track. So that's a little bit of a challenge. That's pretty typical of urban districts. We know a lot of kids come way behind. It's not that they're a little bit behind in their reading. They're way behind, like the earlier speaker had mentioned. So you've got a lot of work to do, and we recognize that this doesn't necessarily take a single year. If a student's at a 3-year-old level of literacy, you can't just bring him up to a 6-year-old overnight. So we understand that. But one of the things we look at, and this is where I think there are some positives, for Dayton, we look at the number of students that you have said are okay, that are not having struggles with their reading. They don't need intervention services, they're fine, who don't pass their third grade English test, and we look at this for third grade only, you only had 3 students like this in the whole district, which is pretty phenomenal given the size of your district. I mean, there are much smaller districts that had a lot more students that they didn't have intervention services going for, that were not proficient on that third grade test. So one of the things that says to me is that I think your early elementary and early intervention specialists are really trying to ferret out who has challenges with reading and to make sure that they're getting the services that they need so that they can become proficient readers by the end of third grade. And like I said, the overall, 14.9% is pretty typical of the, for the Big 8 districts. The final piece is prepared for success, and that looks at students clear at the other end of high school. What we're looking at there is of your students in the graduating classes, and in this case it's classes of 16 and 17, how many of them were prepared for success for life after high school, whatever it is that they choose to do. This is a measure created by our state legislature, and there are various pieces that put a student in the numerator that deem them prepared for success. And I'll tell you up front, we are having some very long discussions right now about whether some additional pieces should be added to this component. There are a lot of feelings among all districts in the state that we're not taking into account some other things that kids do that deem them prepared or that show that they're prepared for life after high school. And one of those, for example, is either becoming employed in a job that pays a living wage or going into the military. And so those are not part of this measure because it is statutorily created. We have to stick with what's in the state law. But a couple of things that we noticed is that, in the classes of 16 and 17, only 44.1% of the students participated in taking the ACT. Now that's going to change moving forward because we now give that test statewide to every 11th grade student. So as you move into future cohorts, you're likely to see those numbers skyrocket to close to 100%. Because other than a few exemptions, all students in the state must take either the ACT or SAT. Of those kids that took the ACT and SAT, you had 5.4% scoring remediation free on the ACT, and 1.1% scoring remediation free on the SAT. So obviously that's pretty low. The remediation free scores are set by Ohio's colleges. So the 13 four-year colleges like Miami, Wright State, University of Cincinnati, et cetera, those university presidents get together and they look at their data to determine where a student needs to be successful in their institution, and that's how those are set. We saw 2% of the students in those 2 graduating classes combined earning honors diplomas, and only 2.1% earned an industry credential that totals 12 points. And the way that works is for students that are in career centers or who are in vocational training, we know a lot of them are either going to go straight into the workforce or into some form of an apprenticeship. They may not go on to an institution of higher education. So for a lot of them, they're taking some kind of a credential at the end of high school that deems them prepared for the workforce. And so we have a lot of different credentials out there. Some are big credentials. Things like cosmetology, the state's cosmetology tests. If a student passes that, they can hang a shingle and do cosmetology work. That's worth a full 12 points as one credential. We have some that are worth smaller amounts of points because that credential alone isn't going to deem a student ready for the workforce. But if they bundle it with other credentials in their field, then they become marketable, and there's somebody that someone in that field would want to hire. And an example of that is like Microsoft Office. Just knowing Word or just knowing PowerPoint may not get you in the door. But if you can show that you know the whole Office suite of programs, Word and PowerPoint, Excel, Outlook, all of those things, then that may be something that gets you in the door as an administrative professional or something in the marketing department, things like that. So, like I said, 2.1% of the students earned one of those credentials that qualify them to be prepared for success. Another thing we noticed is that 10.5% of the students in those 2 classes took an AP course. But of those kids that took a class, less than half of them were able to score a 3 or higher on that AP test. So that's something else to take a look at. On the upside with this piece, 34.2% of the students took at least one College Credit Plus course. And I know you've got several college campuses here with whom you work, specifically to try to encourage students to go and take CCP. It's a great way, if they're ready for that type of coursework, they can get a head start on college, save some money, get used to the rigor and demand of college courses. So that, I think, was something, in looking at a third of those students in those two classes, graduating classes, had taken at least a college course, I think is something that's positive, because hopefully they had a good experience. And obviously, if they got the credits, it means they passed the class. And so they are, in the process of building some kind of a transcript that hopefully will lead to more college down the road. So that's a real high-level overview. We will be updating the data, but if you have questions at this time, I'd be happy to answer.
Board members, Board Member McManus.
Thank you, Mr. President. And to the team, thank you again for this, this information. I recall the last time that this conversation was had several years ago, and the day that we avoided the state takeover was a joyous day. But I do recall prior to that event speaking with the administration about the partnership between the state and the district in terms of the communication that your team does with us periodically and quite consistently in order to help us avoid that outcome. So now that the team has presented to the board and to the administration your findings, would you explain to the community and to my colleagues a little bit about what that process looks like, how often your team checks in with us, et cetera, so that we can be, and so that the board can be consistently checking in with the administration on what's being done to meet your expectations?
I'll let my colleague answer that one.
Thank you, ma'am. Mm-hmm.
I'll begin, and then we'll have our Senior Executive Director elaborate. So as I already mentioned, the state support team has been working with the district through their district leadership team. We now have more of a concerted effort in aligning ODE resources to give support as well. When it comes to the actual recommendations, as I mentioned, we'll be expecting the district to have their report inform the improvement plan that they already have, and we'll do a crosswalk of what's already in their plan, which is similar to many things that we already have, and what might be outliers that need to be incorporated into it, and how we will work through that. So that has been a process up to this point of working with the district and now regularly communicating monthly with ODE staff and the state support team with the district to try to get more support. Did you want to add more, Dr. Moore?
I would like to add more.
Thank you, ma'am, for that.
Before you ask another question, so my name is Marva K. Jones. In week 5 at ODE, first board meeting since leaving
Welcome.
other places. Past 28 years, I've been in K through 12 education. Started as a teacher, special ed intervention specialist, say yay, and ended as, well, I won't say ended, but I'm a recovering superintendent, I might say, Dr. Lally. One of the things, the reason that I was hired was because we wanted to put a new look to a portion of ODE, to say, what are we going to do, Marva K. Jones, so we don't have more districts going into academic distress. That's why I told Clary, I said, as early as I am in this process, I know the reason that I was hired. We work very closely with the state support team every month. The state support team, Johanna Ward has been down here, works with the state support team 2 days a month. But we want to take a look. I personally want to take a look. Claria's heard that, Johanna's heard that. What are we doing differently for those districts that are in great need? You're one of those districts in great need. I'm the closer tonight. Heard a lot of good things about what's going on great here. I took notes. My gosh, I mean, Mr. Yu, the high school teacher, Dayton Scholars Program, President Harris, Superintendent Lally, the good relationship, David Romick. I took all that down. A lot of good things are happening. And then Mary Ann Motley got up here and told you, you've got some good things going on. Can somebody name me something that she talked about that you ought to jump on? Anybody?
We only had 3. I want Jeremy to put that in the paper tomorrow. that we had 3 students, only 3 students.
But that is
third
not,
grade, yeah.
that might not be as good as you think. You want to make sure you're addressing more, and straighten me up if I'm wrong. You want to address more students so that you know that they can show that they went from not on track to on track. Am I correct in that statement?
got it.
So that's what, you're labeling too few, I might say. You want to label more.
Sure.
ESL.
Yes.
Marianne Motley, the report card queen, said, fairly better than some other districts in the state of Ohio. Woo, woo to Dayton. Okay, can you guys give me a woo, woo? Yeah. You got it. What's another area that you need to work on with participation?
Attendance.
Attendance and test participation. Am I speaking correctly, Marianne? Your test participation, there shouldn't be a student here in this district that doesn't get that test. If you got to drag them, pull them, push them, you want them here taking that test, figuring out a way or getting a legitimate reason as to why they aren't, so it's not counted against you. High school, graduation rate, what's happening in that second year? Your 4th year, am I correct? That 4th year, doing okay? What happens in that 5th year? So those are some of the things that we want. And sir, tell me your last name.
Oh, McManus.
Board Member McManus.
Yes, ma'am.
We want to say, what can you hop on right now
Amen.
to improve those areas? Is that the Ohio improvement process? Picking a few areas, doing them really well. I talked to 2 superintendents today. I said, you missed ADC. Tell me what I should say to Dayton. I've got some information for you. Superintendent Lawley. They don't have the answer. But they said, this is what we did. Maybe it helps. They don't know what's going to happen next year, but they bypassed ADC this year. And so I thought, who better than me to talk to superintendents? I've been out of the superintendent chair since 2014. Who better than me, the ones who currently escaped ADC status? I got a conversation in a couple weeks where somebody is in ADC status. We want me and this group here next year saying, can you give me a woo-woo? We want to be saying woo-woo to your district, all right? Look at the areas, the few areas where you can really make some gains, and you know all of this. I heard from Mr. Romick and SST director said you got a great DLT process. Look at those. Really hone in. Who are the teachers who might need to be in the classrooms, who really have a clue about what to do? Look at a few areas. Not everything across the board. Marianne went to everything across the board. Even though it was at a high level, it's a lot. Look at a few areas, do them well, and then move on down that road or up the street or down the stream, whichever way you want to go.
Board Member Reiner had a question or a comment.
Thank you, President Harris. I would like to thank ODE for coming tonight and speaking with us. Thank you to all of our guests. There was a lot to unpack tonight. And I know that each person up here and members of the cabinet take everything that you said seriously. I'm grateful for the recognition that you've given us, but I'm also cognizant of the hard work we have ahead, and I look forward to speaking again in a year. I know that we will put our best efforts towards improving.
And Board Member, we want to certainly be, as Board Member McManus said, before that year. When we looked at that letter that was going out to Superintendent Lawley, that this is year 2 of ADC, we don't want to talk to you a year from now. We don't want to talk to you 6 months from now. You're going to get a call, Superintendent Lawley. You may say, what can I do? I'm going to be here on site or on the phone saying, you tell me. Working with our state support team members. You got a good union and administration for the union president to get up here and say what. So lots of things. I heard so many teachers, we love our kids, we love this district, we love this community. We can talk about the good, but we got to address and really look at those areas that need improvement. So we can pat ourselves on the back for good things. Nobody's failed. But what are we going to do to make sure we're not here next year with a different message? I'm Marva K. Jones. I appreciate these folks coming out. I wish you nothing but the best. We're not going away. We're here to support and to assist. We're your foundation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you coming. And I'd like to allow Superintendent Lawley to address the community.
I'd like to also thank the ODE and Ms. Motley. Thank you for the report card review. We have started the analysis, and those of you that are in the audience can turn around and see the results that we've pulled out. The results you don't see up there are also pulled out. So we've started that work, and we actually are getting ready to start a process in October called Rejuvenate, Refresh, and Revive Teaching, where we focus in on the instructional practices in our classroom, those evidence-based classrooms, evidence-based practices that you spoke about. We're doing instructional walkthroughs. Every member of the cabinet, every member of the curriculum team, which is all back in the corner there, thank you for being here tonight. All of us do instructional walkthroughs, and Mr. Romick also goes on those instructional walkthroughs. So we have been to buildings, every classrooms, not every classroom, excuse me, classrooms inside that building within clusters of grade levels, looking to see where we need to focus and what we need to take a look at. So we're getting ready to start a very intense process on focusing in on teaching and focusing in on learning. It has 5 different steps to it that we've worked with Mr. Romick on, and we've worked with the Board of Education on. So you will be back here next year going woo-woo, because we are not going to be in the Distress Commission viewpoint at that point in time. So we look forward to sharing our progress with you. But I also wanted to throw out a huge thank you to the state support team. Betsy Apolito has been working with this district for well over 10 years. And in the last 3 years, she has continued to stay the course with the district, even through some very, very tough times. And in the last, I would say the last 2 years, we have really started to have high-functioning district leadership team meetings. And we've also had our BLT process, our building leadership teams, improve exponentially. Are they all there yet? No, they are not. However, we continue with the ongoing building leadership team trainings that Betsy and her team support us on, and we continue to make strides in that area, looking at the data, making decisions about our students and our learning. So I want to thank the SST, the whole group of SSTs, and especially Ms. Apolito, because without her leadership, there would be a lot of BLT, DLT work that did not go as smoothly as it has gone over the last 2 years. So I want to throw out a thank you to you and look forward to continuing that work with you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Lawley. Board Member McManus.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Board, I appreciate your indulgence. I know I've asked a lot of questions. Partners at ODE. And please be as specific as possible, because the local community's right to control its own school district is in the balance. This is critically important. In accordance with any rules or regulations or legislation, when is the precise deadline for a determination of whether or not Dayton Public Schools will be taken over? And if taken over, precisely what does that look like, so this community can have a full appreciation of what that means, i.e. Youngstown?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about the dates. So by statute, we are required to issue a report card no later than September 15th of each year. Our normal practice is to do it on the 15th when that's a work day. If it's a weekend, we do it the Thursday before. So I believe next year it probably will be on a Sunday, because I think the 15th was a Saturday this year. So we would do it, I guess that would be the 12th, that the report cards would be released. We do that calculation because it's pretty easy. It's an overall F. We would do that calculation at the time of the release. We would know which districts would be subject to this. So we would notify you, very quickly. So, and there are statutory timeframes when a CEO is appointed, when a board is created. It happens pretty quickly. I think most of the things happen within 30 to 60 days of the notification that you go into an ADC. And what it looks like, there is a chief executive officer that's appointed. There is a separate board that is appointed, and at that point there's a in-depth review by that CEO and his team.
Thank you for that information. Also, are the statutory provisions related to collective bargaining contracts and a takeover's effect on those bargaining contracts still in place? And number two, on any special abilities related to converting a traditional public school into a charter. Are those still in place pursuant to a takeover? Anything about collective bargaining?
So, in essence, it's written in House Bill 70 what the various stages are for each year. So, if you look on the website for House Bill 70, there are different guidelines that are given to the CEO the first, second, and third year. And some of those provisions do exist further on, but not in that first year of the CEO.
Okay. This is very, very important information. And thank you. And Board and Superintendent, Mr. President, thank you for your indulgence.
Thank you very much. Again, we're certainly grateful to the Ohio Department of Education. Thank you, team, for sharing the report with us. Thank you so much. This time we'll have an update from Ms. Mack as she comes to share with us regarding English language learners.
First of all, I want to recognize the curriculum team. They were not required to be here or asked to be here. And they came in support of what we're about and what the district about. So I want to ask each of you to stand so you could be acknowledged, please. Thank you. I also like to acknowledge all of our teachers who work with our students in the ELL program. Would you please stand so that you can be acknowledged for what you do on a daily basis? And I appreciate each of you being here as well. Thank you. As a matter of fact, I got an email from one of them asking me, what is it that you need? What is it that you want? Because they realize that I, too, am new at what I'm doing, and I, too, am learning. And I couldn't do it without their support, so I appreciate each and every one of you. This evening, I'm going to talk about educating all students, because although we have many subgroups, this subgroup, as with all, we have certain guidelines to meet. And the mission of the ELL program says that we're equipping our students to provide an effective and rigorous curriculum with fidelity so that all can achieve. So we know that the ELL learners are those students who are not proficient in English, and that is not their native language, and who are currently cannot perform ordinary classwork in English. And I am so appreciative of the data and the growth that these teachers are able to make with our students and the work that they do. Because our students come in very diverse. They're all bilingual learners. They may arrive with some or very little schooling. And we have many diverse languages. We have those who are speakers of language that are very independent learner. They may arrive anytime during the year. We currently, right now in our system, and we had 3 people give me numbers today, and those numbers can fluctuate. And I'm going to say 1,000 instead of 983, but 3 people gave me 983 today who are enrolled in Dayton Public School. And that can vary based on how our students are tagged when they are put into the system. We are cleaning that up now, and we're still working on it. As of today, and this can be based on screening, we have enrolled 82 new ELL students. On the next slide, you will see that we represent or have in our district 23 languages. The highlighted ones are the ones that are more students than we have in any other languages. And you can see what those look like. So our teachers, classroom teachers, are challenged on a daily basis to hit that Tier 1 core instruction so that we can ensure that our students are hitting the standards as well with all of our students. The next slide shows where these students are located. There is a star on Louise Troy. The star represents where we have teachers. I do not have one at Louise Troy. But if you look, every building has some representation of our English language there. So I want to point out that we did post positions for teachers that were certified in TESOL. I received, let me look on the back. I have 5 applications, one of which meets the criteria. That's where we are. I received 6 applications for ESL, and we're working on that right now. So they're still coming in, coordinators. So we do have them posted. We're in the process of looking, and I did have a couple of teachers who asked to be on the team when we get to the final for viewing. The next slides represent, out of all of the 1,000 of students, these are the only languages where students who do not speak any English at all. So in comparison to 1,000, this is what we have right now. The next slide, and this goes back to the quote, that what we want for our students and for all of our students to have authentic, age-appropriate text with instructional support. We want that for every kid, but especially those who need that second tier of instruction. And that comes from having the support in language development. Then what are we doing about this? Again, we are requiring our entire district to, you want to go to the next slide, to look at our PSYOP strategies. We are requesting and requiring and following through that every teacher receives PSYOP training, and that's the Shelton Instruction for Observational Protocol, which gives them strategies not only to work with the EL students, but all students. So that's one requirement. We use Elevation as the district software so that we can identify our students, look at strategy, and make sure there's a student enrollment. The National Geographic is our instructional resources that we use with all of our EL students. And then VocalLink and Affordable. These are the 2 sources that we use for interpretation. As a matter of fact, I had a bus driver call me last week who said, we're getting home, we have a kindergartner, but we're getting there and the parents aren't out there. What do we do? And so she was able to do with VocalLink, there's an app and you can have a face-to-face look with the interpreter and the parent on the phone so that they can actually understand. And so now the parents are there before the kid actually gets home. On November the 6th, we have professional learning for in the area of PSYOP, Elevation, and National Geographic to support our classroom teachers as well as our EL teachers. We are working with a couple of ESCs to get supports to look at our procedures and protocol in our enrollment to make sure it's cleaned. And we're also going to have an audit this year with this department so that we can look at how effective we are, what things we need to do differently, and how we can make an impact and continue to see growth in our student population. The bottom line is when we look at our ELF program, it is not the sole responsibility of these teachers here. It takes the entire district to provide that support. The classroom teacher, and that's through the PSYOP strategy, as well as the principals and all the supports in the building are to be a part of this. When we look at our ELL program, we must not think about that the student's language is the disability. It brings that rich culture to what we do in our classroom. It's an ability that the student has. We want our students to have access to full curriculum, and that's in the classroom and then supported by our ELL teachers. Although they may not have the perfect language, it should not be a prohibitor. Again, we want to classroom teacher as well as our ELL to support. And we want to regularly engage our students in authentic, grade-appropriate responses. So my overview today is to tell you where we are, who they are, and what we're currently doing to continue to support this population. We're working to get it all done. It's not going to be done overnight, but I'm working as quickly as possible with the support of this team to get things done.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mack. We have a question from Board Member Reiner.
Thank you, President Harris. Thank you, Dr. Mack. I appreciate the presentation. I do think that this is a good opportunity for us to answer some of the questions that were brought up today. The ELL program is of particular interest to me. I've seen students come in from other countries and really blossom when I've seen them in my children's own school community. And I really feel so strongly that we need to make sure that we are giving them what they need and what we know we need to give them. So I would like to ask you a couple questions today based on some of the questions that we had earlier from the public comment. And I understand that you're new, but I still think that we need to hold ourselves to the highest standards. And to echo what you said before, and I know we've been here a long time, so please bear with me. It's been a long meeting, and we have a long ways to go still. Like you said before, Dr. Mack, it is not the responsibility of just the teachers. This is the entire district's responsibility, and I shoulder that myself. And I will not let this pass by to make sure that we're addressing these needs. So the unidentified students that have come in that should have been identified, can you speak to why all those students came in and they were unidentified, and what perhaps the stumbling blocks were and what you're doing to address that?
Well, I'm a little confused about unidentified. For example, right now, any student that is in a building, for example, like Wagaman, those students normally would go to a hub. We had 5 students there. There are 4. I have information from that building verifying there are 4 students that are there instead of 5. 1 we have already moved to Kaiser. So therefore, I'm not sure if we have any unidentified students. What I have today is what has been placed in the system, as well as verifying names against those buildings that we've called every principal and asked, especially in those that do not have an EL teacher, please provide the names of the students who are in need of services. And I have that information by building and by principals with those that did respond.
Okay, so when a student was assigned to a school that does not have any ELL teachers, so I'm looking at the list right now from your slideshow earlier. For example, Wagaman, there are 4 students at Wagaman in 7th grade that are ELL, and there are no teachers there. Did we know when we put them in Wagaman that they were ELL students without having somebody in that, a teacher, a certified ELL teacher in that school?
I would say yes, and the reason being is that when the hub was full and they did not have space in those classrooms, it was a decision that we as a district would start placing students in their closest community. And so that's what it was based on. At that time, we only had 1 student who had difficulty with the language, and that student has been moved. We've been working with Hamilton County ESC, who's been working with us on the screening. All of them have had professional development on how to provide that screening. We're still working on that process now. Did that answer your question or not?
It did. It troubles me that we had to do that and that we did not already have those resources in those schools.
That is correct. And as you know, we have placed applications out, and the only thing I know to do right now, based on the enrollment, is that we probably will have to move teachers so that we can serve all of these students. So we may have to have a teacher traveling between buildings. And
how
that's
many-
going to be our next step. Dr. Lawley and I spent time last week looking at numbers and enrollments.
Superintendent.
For example, if you look at the enrollment, Board Member Reinert, Bellhaven has 2 students. That's not a full-time teacher. And if you're serving the student, in a manner where it's a resource situation, for example, like we do Title I, where we pull the student out for the block of time and teach them the National Geographic curriculum, that would be a period or so. So that's, depending on the levels of those 2 students, they could be in the same level if they're at level A in the National Geographic or level C in the National Geographic. You'd have both in the same group. Otherwise, you would need to have 2. You would have to have individualized work for them. So that would be 2 hours out of the day. So that's what she's addressing. And some of the students that we received, according to your chart, already spoke some English, so they need supports as opposed to full inclusion in a group. And I would like to remind the board that 2 years ago, the district had talked about doing a full newcomer type program because the numbers of our students were so large. We supported last year Wright Brothers having a newcomer program that's been very successful for we started with 6th graders when we had 6th graders there. And we had 6th graders in that building, and now there are 7th and 8th graders who are still part of that newcomers program there. So as time goes by, the district may want to think about that, depending on the numbers that we have come into the district. And I'm not suggesting that with a newcomers program that they stay isolated from the rest of the population by any means, but perhaps a newcomer center, so when they get to a level of proficiency, then they move into other buildings. I don't know how that would work socially with the social emotional. We'd have to have that conversation with the staff and parents. But right now, with our hubs filling up and those buildings also increasing in some cases with students that are non-ELL students, we're having difficulty in making sure that we have balanced classes across the district. So that was the reasoning.
Thank you. Dr. Mack, are there recommendations you can make for ways that the district can encourage more applicants to be our ELL teachers?
I am reaching out to some of the ESCs and seeing what they can do to help support us in helping to find applicants. And they are working on that as we speak. Yes.
I was just going to also suggest that with the tuition reimbursement plan that you're voting on tonight, that's an opportunity for our regular classroom teachers to also pick up their TESOL endorsements, because they can take those classes and be reimbursed for that, those classes when they take those either online, and there are several online TESOL programs, so we could actually build our own cohort of teachers by them taking that grouping.
Thank you, Superintendent Lawley. I believe I just have one more question for now. So my understanding is that I know that the majority of the high school ELL students were in Belmont High School. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And it's also my understanding that the program there has gotten quite large, and the wish is to give other high schools the opportunity to have ELL students. Is that correct?
Well,
I'm sorry, I'm sounding too much like Mr. McManus. I'm getting into lawyer mode. That's what my understanding of the program was.
My understanding that the reason we have few students in some of the high school is based on enrollment. There were no spaces for those particular students. So, and then we have spaces in the high schools at those particular areas, and that's where students are placed in their home. Attendance area are close to their homes.
Okay. The one concern I have about that I would like to make sure that we keep a close eye on is I know that since most of the students were previously at Belmont and in the coming years they'll be going to different high schools, is that we make a real effort to keep siblings together. Transportation is always difficult, and I think I would like to make sure that we do everything we can to make everything easier on the families, that they already have so much on their plate.
And we did that. At the beginning of the year, Kaiser had no space in kindergarten, and unfortunately, 4 got in, and then the other one was at another site. We have since moved that kid this week. So they're all in the same building at this point in time.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Mack. I appreciate it.
Thank
President
you.
Harris.
Board member Donny had a question some time ago.
I can yield my time to Karen, sir.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Mohammed.
Karen?
Thank you, yeah. As we're working to create a perfect world, which we all know doesn't exist, but, thank you for your information this evening. But one of the concerns that I heard expressed that is important to me is that, I'm a big fan of the social emotional learning piece. So these kids are challenged with learning English, or, their families are transitioning in. And one of our teachers indicated these deep roots that we have with families. I wonder if we wouldn't benefit in these communities by having, family nights where our interpreters were there, where we could understand the concerns, where it's all about communication, right? We're not going to fix everything, but if we have a platform where we can communicate, where we can understand the information and move forward, I think that it's super important. Could we hear maybe some possibility around that as an option for family resource nights or anything like that?
I'd like to address that. The TESOL teachers are paid an extra stipend to make those at-home connections and to have those types of activities for parents. So we can make sure that we update you on what's occurring with that. But secondly, I went to Welcome Dayton meeting where the same thing was addressed there. They asked about what about the social emotional growth of the students as they're adapting to new environments and everything. And there were 4 people that volunteered to meet with me and have conversations with our curriculum team and me about what we can do to support that inside each of the buildings. So we haven't developed that team yet. I have the 4 names as of today, and Chief Mack and I will determine some additional people to add to that, and then make sure that we offer some district-wide pieces as well as the individualized pieces that our TESOL teachers offer.
Thank you.
Board Member Taylor.
Can you please give us some type of idea of what the largest number, because I'm hearing that we're having our students, the EL, that we're losing many of them. The population has dropped quite a bit. That's what the
So
teachers tell us from their schools.
Yeah.
And I would like to know from which language, from what culture that those folks come from for the most part, because they're, many of those cultures are very close-knit in the communities. So if we are having large numbers of students leaving that are of the same language, then it makes me wonder why, and what are we doing to stop that? Are we going out to those community groups within that culture and having dialogue with them? Are they leaving to go to charter schools? Or are they moving out of Dayton? I really do think if we have that number, that it would be advantageous to start having real clear dialogue. And so that maybe either we can get them back or stop that from happening.
What I will do is get that information for you. I do not have it right now, so that I can have accurate information and get that back to you through the superintendent.
Thank you, Dr. Mack, and it's
You're
good to see
welcome.
you up there. Thank you.
Board Member AlHamdulillah.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Appreciate you coming back to me for the time. Thank you, Dr. Mack, for your presentation. I greatly appreciate it, and I wanted to recognize the ESL teachers for the great work. I am a product of the ESL program at Dane Public Schools, so I truly appreciate everything that you guys do. I am glad to see that we're also challenging other teachers. I'll tell you, the person that had the most effect on me to help me learn English was not my ESL teacher, nothing against you, but it was Miss Babs, who was my English teacher at 7th grade, who sat me down and said, "You're going to have to learn how to read this Narnia book." I was like, "Okay," but I'm an ESL. She's like, "I don't care."
Yeah.
Some of you know Miss Babs, including you, Mr. President, know that's what happened.
Yes.
I guess my question to you is, there has been a culture at DPS for a long time that our students go to hubs, or they go to specific schools. When I was going to school, you went to Louise Troy, then Miami Chapel, then Fairview, then Colonel White, and now it's other schools. So what are we doing to challenge that perception inside the schools that don't normally get those kids? And what are we doing to give those leaders the support, let's say it that way, that they need to appreciate and I know they see it as a challenge, but the gifts that the ESL students are bringing to their schools? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
In reference to, the professional development is one, and we're really going to stress that this year. We'll be offering after-school or even Saturday classes for those that can, and then for the SIG buildings, we can do that even more frequently, but we are going to offer those courses. As far as administrators and principals and teacher leaders, is that ongoing PD and conversations about, and that's why at the front of my PowerPoint, I said all children. And so when we start looking at subgroup, it's not just one, but all of them. And we have the responsibility of ensuring that all of our kids have the same opportunity and the resources and materials so that everybody can be successful. So that's what we're doing.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mack, for your presentation. Thank you. At this time, we have the superintendent's recommendations. Consent agenda.
We're going to be leaving that are in the audience.
A quick one, please. Quick.
I just want to thank all the staff that came down. It's difficult sometimes for board members to get out to the schools because just as you, I have a full-time day job too. And so it helps us board members when you come and voice issues that you have in the district because as you know, the district is so large and it's real difficult to keep a handle on everything. And you're the ones in the buildings. You're the ones doing the work with the students, hands-on there. And just from facial expressions and comments that were made tonight, I learned a lot. So don't think that you weren't important because you were very important being here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have some items for consent agenda. What's your privilege?
Mr. President, I move that I recommend the approval of the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been properly moved in second. Are we prepared to vote? Any questions? Are we prepared to vote?
Yes.
President Harris,
Yes.
Mr. AlHamdulillah,
Yes.
Mr. McManus,
Yes.
Ms. Reiner,
Yes.
Ms. Taylor,
Yes.
Dr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Wick Gani,
Yes.
7 yeses.
Thank you. Motion carries. Superintendent?
I'd like to recommend the approval of the following DEA resignations after July 10th.
What's your privilege?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are we prepared to vote?
Yes.
President Harris,
No.
Mr. AlHamdani,
No.
Mr. McManus,
No.
Ms. Reinhardt,
No.
Ms. Taylor,
No.
Dr. Walker,
No.
Ms. Wick Gani.
No.
7 no.
Thank you very much. Superintendent?
I'd like to recommend the approval of the following resolution for the Constance Berger Settlement Agreement.
So moved, Mr. President.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any question on the motion? Hearing none, are we prepared to vote?
President Harris,
Yes?
Mr. AlHamdani,
Yes.
Mr. McManus,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Ms. Taylor,
Yes.
Dr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Wick Gani.
Yes.
7 yeses.
Thank you. Motion carries.
I'd like to recommend the approval of the following resolution. It's approval of bus stops for 2018-19.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any question on the motion? Are we prepared to vote?
President Harris,
Yes?
Mr. AlHamdani,
Yes.
Mr. McManus,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Ms. Taylor,
Yes.
Dr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Wick Gani.
Yes.
7 yeses.
Motion carries.
I'd like to recommend the approval of the resolution for tuition reimbursement for teachers.
So moved.
Been properly moved and second. Any question? Are we prepared to vote?
President Harris,
Yes?
Mr. AlHamdani,
Yes.
Mr. McManus,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Ms. Taylor,
Yes.
Dr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Wick Gani.
Yes.
7 yeses.
Motion carries.
I'd like to recommend the approval of the resolution in taking care of the ECOT situation.
So moved, Mr. President.
Is there a
Second.
second? Been properly moved and second. Are we questions? No questions. Are we prepared to vote?
President Harris,
Yes?
Mr. AlHamdani,
Yes.
Mr. McManus,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Ms. Taylor,
Yes.
Dr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Wick Gani.
Yes.
7 yeses.
Thank you. Motion carries.
I'd like to recommend the approval of the DSS salary schedule.
So
Is there a
moved.
motion? Is there a
Second.
second? Heard a second over here. Any
Who's
questions?
I was the second.
Okay.
Yeah.
Board Member AlHamdani, second. Questions? No questions? We're prepared to vote.
President Harris,
Yes?
Mr. McManus,
Yes.
Mr. AlHamdani,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Ms. Taylor,
Yes.
Dr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Wick Gani.
Yes.
7 yeses.
Motion carries. Thank you so much, Superintendent. At this time, we will have our treasurer's recommendations.
Okay. I would like to recommend a resolution tuition rates for 2018-2019.
So moved.
Is there a second? Been
Second.
Properly moved and second. Any questions? Are we prepared to vote?
President Harris,
Yes?
Mr. AlHamdani,
Yes.
Mr. McManus,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Ms. Taylor,
Yes.
Dr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Wick Gani.
Yes.
7 yeses.
Thank you. Motion carries.
I would like to recommend a resolution accepting the 2018-2019 amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission.
So moved.
Been properly moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Properly moved and second. Any questions? Hearing none, are we prepared to vote?
President Harris,
Yes?
Mr. AlHamdani,
Yes.
Mr. McManus,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Ms. Taylor,
Yes.
Dr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Wick Gani.
Yes.
7 yeses.
Motion carries.
I would like to recommend the following, then and now certificates.
So moved.
Been properly moved. Is there a
Second.
second? Been second. Are we, any questions on the motion? Hearing none, are we prepared to vote?
President Harris,
Yes.
Mr. AlHamdani,
Yes.
Mr. McManus,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Ms. Taylor,
Yes.
Dr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Wiggany.
Yes.
7 yeses.
Thank you very much. Motion carries. Thank you, Treasurer Abraha. At this time, we have new business. Dr. Walker, do you have some policies to address this evening?
Yes, Mr. President. The Policy Committee, there's a resolution to adopt board policy. It's first and second reading. It says, inasmuch as the Board of Education is committed to the continued updating of its policies, rules, and regulations manual, and the committee which was appointed has been working toward that goal. The following is brought at this time for simultaneous first and second reading in compliance with board file. Therefore, be it resolved that the Dayton Board of Education, Dayton City School District, Montgomery County, Ohio, hereby accepts and adopts the following policies which have been codified for inclusion in the Handbook of Policies, Rules, and Regulations. They are file GBIA, also IGDFA. The title is Online Fundraising Campaigns Crowdfunding. It's a new policy. And also, and the second is also the same policy, but a file is to identify it is reversed, and it's IGDFA, also GBIA, Online Fundraising Campaigns / crowdfunding. Because it's a first and second reading, I would move for adoption.
Second.
It's been properly moved and second. Any questions? Hearing none?
President Harris,
Yes.
Mr. AlHamdulillah,
Yes.
Mr. McManus,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Ms. Taylor,
Yes.
Dr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Wiggany.
Yes.
7 yeses.
Motion carries. Thank you.
The Policy Committee also bring items for first reading. There's rationale, inasmuch as the Board of Education is committed to the continued updating of its policies, rules, and regulations manual, and the committee, which was appointed, has been working toward that goal. The following are brought at this time for first reading in compliance with Board File BFC, Policy Adoption. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Dayton City School District, Montgomery County, Ohio, hereby accepts and adopts the following policies that have been codified for inclusion in the Handbook of Policies, Rules, and Regulations. And they are as follows. File BDDG, minutes. It's being revised to align with legislation. File DBD, budget planning, is being revised to align with legislation. File GBI, staff gifts and solicitations, it's being updated to establish district procedure. GBIA, also IGDFA, I'm sorry, let's void that, as well as, we've already acted on that one.
Yep. And the next one.
IGDF, student fundraising activities, is being updated to establish district policy. File IGDJ, interscholastic athletics, is being revised to align with legislation. File JED, students' absences and excuses, is being revised to align with legislation. File JFCJ, weapons in the schools, is being revised to align with legislation. File JGD, student suspension, is revised to align with legislation. File JGDA, emergency removal of students, is revised to align with legislation. File JGE, student expulsion, is revised to align with legislation. And file JP, positive behavior intervention and supports, is being revised to align with legislation. These policies are being read for the first time. As such, a motion or second is not required. The policy will be available in the superintendent's office for review and comments prior to the second reading and adoption by the Board of Education. Therefore, the policies will be reviewed by the superintendent's office, the board's office, and the legal department of the Dayton Public Schools prior to second reading. That cares for the work of the policy committee.
Thank you so much, Dr. Walker, and let me certainly compliment the efforts of the policy committee. It's a lot of activity, and thank you so much to our legal department.
Amen. Thank you.
Pursuant to Section 121.22G2 of the Ohio Revised Code, I move that this board go into executive session. This meeting is being held to consider the purchase and/or sale of property and to confer with an attorney for the Board of Education concerning disputes involving the board that are subject of pending or imminent court action. Is there a second?
Second.
Properly moved and second. Any questions? Hearing none, are we prepared to vote?
President Harris?
Yes.
Mr. AlHamdulillah?
Yes.
Mr. McManus?
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt?
Yes.
Ms. Taylor?
Yes.
Dr. Walker?
Yes.
Ms. Wiggany?
Yes.
7 yeses.
Thank you very much. We'll move into executive session.